Men, and I use the term loosely for no particular reason whatsoever. I've been waiting for a couple of parts to show up. I took a few days off to give the old Quickway boring machine a little love in there. I had to take the spindle out and the boring sleeve and clean the bearings out, re-grease and stuff like that. I don't think anybody's been into that machine for 40 years. I should have videoed that. There were a couple of interesting problems. I had to make a couple of shims. But anyway, that's over and done, and I didn't video it. So it's all back together again. A real pain in the balls. This is the cam cover. It was chrome. The chrome was, of course, all fucked up. I got a guy down the road from me, so to speak, that chromes and unchromed, so he unchromed this. Believe me, it did not look like this when it came back from unchroming. It was a piece of crap. I polished it, and this is what I ended up with. Not perfect, but pretty damn good. Anyway, we're going to put some cam bushings in this thing. As you may recall from a previous video, these two bushings stood proud of this surface, and I wanted to put this all on a surface plate and lap it flat. That's done, and there was a bunch of peeling chrome on this that came off. That's all gone. I got nice contact area all the way around, so I'm happy with that. These are the old bushings that got knocked out of there, and of course old and new. You know, theoretically, well, if these weren't all jacked up, you could use them over again, but they're pretty nasty. But anyway, let's measure them, because if I try to put new bushings in that are much bigger than the old ones, I could break something. If I try to put bushings in that are any much smaller than the old ones, they'll be loose and they'll fall out. And I have taken engines apart where the bushing literally is just loose. You can wiggle it with your finger in there. I'm assuming that the cam, you know, the valves and the springs beating on the cam over the course of years just wallows these bores out a little bit. But anyway, let's measure the old ones. And these come up to be 0.939 for that one and 0.939 for this one. The new ones are 0.940 and 0.940. So these will be a good snug fit. And you probably, if you've taken these apart, you'll notice they have lock pins. This one's kind of jacked up, but these are lock pins and they prevent rotation. What prevents the rotation isn't the hole drilled in the top of the bushing. What prevents the rotation is half of the hole is drilled in the cam cover. And I say that because when I put these in myself, I like to drill the hole of sufficient depth so that the pin is below the surface of this flange. I don't want the hard steel pin coming in contact with the cam. So anyway, let's knock these in and see how it goes. FYI, I've made some tools. Well, let's do one thing first. One of the things I like to do is reuse the same slot. So I just put a little dimple on the edge. And now I know where to locate the hole when I install the new ones. For purpose of installing them, I've got some little tools I made up. Where's the right one? See, this is the right, this is the tool I made for installing these bushings, but it's too big because the bushing hasn't been reamed yet. Let's go get a cam and see how much out of tolerance that's going to be. Stand by, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I just grabbed a cam, any cam. My experience has been that these shafts are usually within exactly the same, maybe within a 10,000th or two. See, and as expected, this bushing needs to be reamed so badly it won't even fit over the cam. So let's see what we got here. We got 0.685. And over here we got 0.673. So about 12 thousandths of metal's got to come off of this before we'll even be able to insert the cam. This is the reamer. Let's see what the reamer is. I know what the reamer is. It's about 1,000th bigger than the cam. Well, the reamer's hard to measure because it's spiral fluted, but I came up with 0.688. So yeah, it's about 1,000th bigger than the cam. Well, maybe 2 thousandths. This is going to be kind of hard to ream. Anyway, we're going to knock these in, and we'll see how it goes. Anyway, stand by one moment. All right, I'm back. Since I can't use the tool I would normally use, I'll use my regular bushing and seal driver. I don't know that it matters where this little oil channel goes, which way it faces. I've seen them installed in all different directions, so I'm not going to really pay much attention to that. Okay, that's one. There's the other one. Okay, normally I would drill the hole for the alignment pin now, but since I can't get my bushing tool in the hole, and I use this bushing tool because it's got an indexed location for the alignment pin, since I can't even get that in there, we're going to lay it on the crankcase. We're going to line ream it to the crankcase, and we'll drill it and pin it after I get it reamed out big enough to get the hole in there, or to get the bushing in there so I could align the hole. So let's line ream a cam bushing. This is an old cam bearing. When you ream these things, you're going to get brass chips floating around in there. I don't want them to end up in the bearing that's going to go in the engine. So this is an old bearing I use just for reaming. When the engine is done, we'll knock that out of there and put the real ones that go in the motor in there. Let's bolt the cam cover on. You don't have to put all the screws in. The alignment pins keep it lined up. I'll just put a couple of screws in just to keep it tight. Flip it over. Okay, the reamer goes in the alignment bushing. The alignment bushing and the reamer get dropped into the bearing, and then using the reamer handle of your choice, you just cut away by hand. You could see the bushing through the adjacent holes, kind of get an idea how you're doing. This has got a ways to go. Getting there. See how we're doing. Getting there. Yeah, I think we're just about there. Let's get the reamer out of the hole. Yep, went all the way through. That's it for that one. I just popped the cam cover off, and you could see the bronze chips that ended up falling down over here. This is why I don't leave the cam bearings in place while I'm reaming. So I'll pop this one out, toss it back in my scrap bin. It'll be ready for the next time I have to ream some bushings, and the bearings that'll go in here will be clean and fresh and not contaminated. This is the bushing we just reamed. I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick that up or not. Let me see if I could get it to pick it up. There we go. Clean, shiny, and smooth on the inside. That's what you're looking for. So I'm going to line up my hole, my alignment hole with my punch mark that I made before. Just eyeballing it, and we'll just drill the hole down to the depth of the masking tape. And there you have it. We'll do the other one. Line the hole up with the punch mark. Fuck. Okay, the down and dirty test. Does the cam fit in the hole and rotate freely? Why, yes, it does. See, here's this other one that was previously tight on this thing. Let's put the reamer through this one. All right, I've got the reamer set up in the number 4 bushing. And when we pulled this engine apart, the number 4 cam was difficult to rotate. And I suspect that was because somebody changed the bushing and put a pin in there that fit too tightly and deformed the bushing a little bit when they hammered it in. So let's clean this one up and see how it goes. See if I could tell whether we're all the way in with it. Looks like it's got a little farther to go, maybe. Let's get a little bigger lever. Yeah, that looks like it's all the way in. Let's get it out of there. Let's get it out of there. That was a pain in the balls. Let's see what the hole looks like now. Yeah, let's see, cam. Much better. Okay, one of the other things that needs to be done, you could see this bushing overhangs a little bit over here and over here and over here, and actually this cam gear can rub on it a little bit. So we're going to take a Dremel tool and clean those off a little bit. Let's test fit some cams. Right now I don't care about timing, I just want to make sure they spin freely. Okay, that's a good sign. Let's see if they spin with the cam cover on. Put a couple of screws in there. You notice there is no cover gasket on. The cover gasket, of course, affects the side clearance and the end plate. Well, let's see if it spins without the gasket there. Okay, they do not. So I expect the ends are binding because there is not enough clearance because there is no cover gasket. Let's back the screws out a little bit. I'll stick my finger in on the generator gear. Yeah, they still don't spin. Let's get the screws out of here. Come on. And let's go get a cam cover gasket. All right, let's see if the cam gears spin now. No, they do not. All right, here's the problem. Put all 4 cams in the generator idler gear in there and the engine doesn't spin over. So one of these gears or more are binding. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to put in the 1 and the 3. They're not driven to each other and see if it spins with just those 2 gears installed. Let's see what happens. Okay, I stick my fingers in through the lifter block holes and these 2 cams spin easily. The other thing I do is I get one lobe up on top and then I'll pry back and forth a little bit. Well, actually I don't even have to pry. This one slides back and forth easily just to check the end play. Let's do the number 1 cam. Get a lobe up on top. Okay. Okay, they both have plenty of end play. So it's not the 1 or the 3. So let's put the 2 and the 4 in and see what happens. The 2 spins easily. Well, the 4 spins easily. Huh. So it is the idler gear causing a problem? Could be. Interesting. So just the idler gear is installed now. Let's see what happens. Well, that spins freely. It's got plenty of end play. What's going on? Let's try this again. Okay, so all the gears are back in. Let's put this cover back on and see what's happening. Something's not happy. This is turning out to be a pain in the balls. Right now, the 1, 2, and 3 cams are in, and the idler gear is in. The idler gear spins fine. I could stick my finger in, and the 1, 2, and 3 cams rotate nicely. It's only a problem when the number 4 cam is in, but by itself the number 4 cam rotates okay. It's only a problem when the number 4 cam is installed with the other cams. So I'm going to, the owner had a extra set of cams in his pile of stuff. I'm going to grab at least the number 4 cam and maybe that whole set and see what happens. It might be something to do with the size of the teeth on the number 4 cam, or I don't know. Anyway, we're going to check out another cam in there and see what happens. Well, we're entering into that area that I like to call a conundrum. The number 4 cam, the extra cams the owner had, are for a 1000cc engine, and this of course is a 900. The number 4 cam is different. I can't use a 1000cc cam in a 900 because on a 1000cc there's a spiral gear for the tack drive. So I have now aligned the timing marks just in case it had something to do with the way the teeth were wearing together. So let's try it one more time. And you know, just FYI, the number 4 was that bushing that was tight before, and I changed the 1 and the 3. The 4 is the same. What's going on? Just going to put a couple of turns on the screws. Let's see if it rotates now. It does not want to rotate. Interesting. Let's pry on the drive gear a little bit. Man, that is stiff. Something weird is going on. What could it be? That is weird. Let's tighten these up a little bit. Tighter than a drum. I don't know. All right, a little bit ago, I was bitching about a conundrum I had with these camshafts. And of course, the conundrum being that when I'm checking that the cams rotate freely within the cam case, each one by itself would rotate just fine. And you know, this is an important thing to check because I just changed a couple of cam bushings. And you know, they've got to be lined up or they won't rotate, and you got to have the correct end clearance, or at least some end clearance, or they won't rotate. So it was a problem. What I ended up finding out was that I tried, actually this is the 3rd number 3 cam that I tried, and when I popped this one in there, everything was good. And I knew immediately everything was going to be good because when I dropped this one in and put the cover on, the cover slipped right on. With these other 2 number 3s that I had tried earlier, one that came with the bike, another one that was in the owner's stash of extra parts, the cam cover was difficult to get on. You had to fidget it around and smack it and play games with it to go on. This one, the cover slipped right on over this, so I knew immediately it was probably going to be okay. And in fact, it was okay. So conundrum solved. I'll probably put this crankcase together tomorrow and truck on, but right now I'm knocking off for the day, and I'll get to it tomorrow. Okay, I had a suspicion that one of these cams was a little oversized. The gears on the cam were a little oversized, or at least bigger than they needed to be or should be for this installation. So I swapped some cams around. I don't have a 2 and a 4 900p cam. I do have 1 and 3 900 ccp cams laying around. So I was on the third one, and watch this. Obviously I checked this already, so this is not going to be a surprise. Notice how the cover slides on, and you'll notice before how I had to whack it to get it on. If you're putting one of these covers on and you encounter resistance, there's something wrong. Don't proceed to hammer the cover on. Do a little investigating and figure out what the problem is. Let's put in this one. So let's recheck and see how we make out now. Flip this over, insert the driving tool. That, my friends, is the result you want. Beautiful. That's good to go. And that's the last thing I needed to check before we bolted these crankcases together. So we're going to go ahead and bolt these crankcases together and truck on with this project. About time. Yeah. All right, moving on. I've smeared some Loctite 518 on the mating surfaces. That is the only product I use for sealing Harley crankcases. I never use silicone. Anything that hardens and has pieces that could break off and get sucked through an oil pump are really a bad idea. That stuff works great. I've never had a problem with case halves leaking. And, you know, non-sponsored endorsement, that's the only shit I use. Anyway, everything that can be checked has been checked. This thing's been cleaned out, blown out, rinsed out. It's ready to go. The cam's all fit. We're ready to put it together and see how it goes. So let's drop the case half on there. And that's all there is to it. This owner is getting stainless steel bolts. Stainless steel bolts will gall and seize up if you look at them the wrong way. Therefore, if you're going to use stainless steel bolts, always use some kind of a anti-seize compound on them. And this is the lower end. It's assembled, ready to go. This is going to be nice. Very happy with this. Before I put the cam cover on, let's do a little post-game analysis, if you will. I'm operating on the theory that these camshafts are different sizes. If they're different sizes, we should be able to measure them. So let's try out something or another. This is the cam that I'm going to use. I put 2 bearings in the teeth. These are not the official pins for measuring cam gears. They're just a couple of bearings I had laying around. So let's measure the one that I'm going to use. Okay, it mics out pretty much exactly to 1.956. Let's look at the other cams. The cams I'm not going to use. Okay, this one mics out to just about exactly 1.958. So let's measure the other one I'm not going to use. Okay, and not surprisingly, this one also makes out to 1.958. So you save 2/1000 of an inch, it's not going to matter. Obviously, it matters. Let's look at another thing here real quick. Let's look at the bushings that were removed from the motor. One of these came out of the number 3 position. Let's see what its inside diameter is. It is 0.688.5. Let's look at the other one. It is 0.689.5. Okay, let's look at the corresponding location where the new bushings were put in. Okay, this bushing is 0.686. Let's look at the number 3 that was also replaced. And it also comes out to 0.686. Number 1, number 3. Okay. So by installing new cam bushings, we took out a little over 2/1000 of an inch of clearance. So the new bushings, after being reamed, line reamed to the crankcase, are 0.002 smaller than the bushings that were in there. And we'll look at the cam gears. The gear that didn't fit well, the original gear, and one of my arbitrarily picked number 3 replacements were this much bigger in diameter than the gear I ended up using, so another 2/1000 of an inch. So in order to get this gear train to rotate freely, roughly I took about 0.004 of an inch of free play out of the system. So it's entirely possible that one of these two gears would have worked okay with one of these cam bushings, because these cam bushings were sufficiently large that it gave room for the gear to float around in there. So we can measure what happened. Now, you know, I was not aware that on the old bikes, the Ironheads, Harley paid any particular attention to cam size. And I don't know that you could ever have bought those cams in particular oversizes as far as the gears are concerned. But once again, something you got to watch out for. If you're putting an old motor together and you don't know the pieces all came matching, you have to check everything. Anyway, so much for that. Let's put the cams in this thing and wrap this part of the project up. Okay, let's wrap the cam install part of this project up. Just to verify, oil pump rotates freely. If you can't rotate the oil pump with your fingers, something's wrong. Take it apart, figure out what you did wrong, and do it over again. The dot is in the timing hole on the other side. I like to do this part of the project with the bike engine laying on its side so that the flywheels just don't want to rotate as a result of gravity and the weight of the wheels. So let's put this in there. Oh, and this does not matter. This line doesn't need to be there. It doesn't do anything. Okay, dead nuts in the middle. This is where it needs to go. Let's double check the hole and the dot, make sure they're still lined up. Okay, dot is still in the middle. This part is done. Okay, the next part of the project is to install the pinion gear. This timing mark does matter, and there is a master spline. And once again, this is the kind of thing you could beat it on with a hammer and risk fucking up your truing job, or you could use a tool. Screw the tool in. And then we'll push the gear onto the shaft. This one's going on pretty easy. Some of them are very tight. And that's it. You want the gear flush with the end of the splines. Let's make sure everything still rotates. Rotates nicely, no weird. Do not forget to put the rock catcher filter in. There it goes. I don't use gasket sealer on this. If your surfaces are clean and flat and free of nicks, you don't need gasket sealer. We'll put in the number 1 and the number 3 cams. Okay, let's put in the number 2. I like to pre-position the crank and the cams about where I think they're going to need to be, and then just line the marks up. Okay, they're all lined up. Let's drop in the number 4. Four is good. Okay, all good. All the parts that need to be inside there are in there. I don't use shims to adjust the end play on these. Harley had a bulletin that came out, I don't know, I think early 70s. They were no longer putting shims in the production motor. I have found a number of engines where, for whatever reason, the cams get side loaded or end loaded, and the shims get torn up and broken pieces start floating around in your gearbox over here. If those pieces of shim get caught between the gears, conceivably they could crack your flywheels or crack your crankcases. Let's make sure it all rotates still. Nice. I like to go around a couple of times, double check the marks. Okay, there we go. All lined up still. Anyway, that's it. So we're going to put the cam cover on next. Okay, let's pop the cam cover on. If all of our test fitting, pre-fitting was done correctly, this will go on, stay on, and won't have to come off again. Fits nicely. These are stainless steel. Goober them up with anti-seize. Okay, screws are in, screws are all tight. Let's see if it still spins. Yes, it does. Once again, I've achieved my two favorite words, suck and cess. And that's what you want to have. Okay, here's one other precautionary step I always take on rebuilds. I've got an oil line hooked up to the pump inlet with the funnel on it. We're just going to put some oil in there. And then we're going to start stroking the engine, baby. Okay, I can already see the oil being drawn down. What we're waiting for is oil to come up out of the supply holes for the rocker arms. Okay, oil's coming up out of there. Let's plug those holes. We're going to empty out the funnel, by which time oil should be coming out around the connecting rods. Okay, the funnel's empty. I'm sure there's some oil in the tube. Let's see. Yep, and I could see oil coming out around the connecting rods. So this engine is oiled. Everywhere there needs to be oil, it's got oil. Cap the inlet, keep any shit out of there. I'm going to go clean up the lifter blocks. We'll put those guys in. Okay, lifters are in. Polish the bodies up with a little bit of 400 grit sandpaper. One of the last things I like to do is do a kind of a down and dirty valve timing test. So let's rotate the engine. Okay, intake valve opening, intake valve closed, rod compression, power, and exhaust valve opens. Okay, front one is about right. I mean, it could be off by a tooth, I suppose, but it's in the ballpark. I've seen some cams that were mismarked from Harley by quite a bit, and this would find that for you. So let's check the rear. Same drill. Okay, intake valve opens, intake valve closed. We're on compression, power, and exhaust. Whoops, let's try that one again. Okay, intake valve is open. Intake valve closed. Compression, power. Okay, exhaust valve opening, exhaust valve open. Okay, that's good. Okay, so the timing, valve timing is basically correct. I got no doubts that this motor should run and run fine when it gets fired up. And that's it for this lower end. Hey, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. See you later. Bye.